the whole education system, Nigeria is still obviously the impact of British colonialism, and it wasn't designed to help to make Nigerians aware of what their history is, make them proud of their own ethnicity and their own culture. I was reading something the other day that I was saying it was designed to serve them, essentially, to serve the white man.
It was designed as an extract economy.
Exactly. It was designed to serve them. And that this person was arguing that, I wish I could, maybe I'll send you the article afterwards, but he was basically saying that there's a difference between being educated and schooled. The Nigerians are schooled, but they're not educated. You can go to school, but you're not actually, true education is when you're empowered to help yourself and your own people. And that is not happening. So there's a gap in people's understanding, right? Because they're looking at African Americans and there may be, for some people, they're not looking at it through the lens of, okay, this is the trajectory. So there's no empathy. They're just like, why are you guys like this? You're in America. You guys should be fine. A trope that is heard a lot is like Nigerians are one of the most successful immigrant groups in America. If they could do it and they're Black, why can't you guys do it? Actually, you don't have the same history. Nigerians are coming from a country where everybody is Black and they're coming to migrate. That's not the same thing as someone who can say, my great granddad was a slave.
Yeah, and who went through this systematic racism and institutionalized. Man, I cannot stand the States, personally. There's so much. That place is almost like Nigeria. The corruption is actually pretty obvious in the States. I would say the corruption is more obvious in the States than it is in Britain, for sure. There are things that are so obvious and people just get away with it. Especially when we talk about the police, when we talk about all these different things. It's just, man, let me not even get started.
Yeah, usually we're the more polite version, like the British are the more polite version of America, essentially.
100%.
It's like, how can you have a privatized criminal justice system where they start using prisoners as free labor? That's just slavery. And how can you have judges lying about something and then CCTV footage or body cam footage comes out from the police? I'm talking about something that happened recently about a Black man that was deaf and had cerebral palsy. Apparently, there was a white man that was doing racist things, saying racist things, and the store called the police to apprehend this white man that was causing the disturbance. The police, 2 white police officers come now, they speak to the white man, and then the white man says, some guy pushed me, some other Black guy pushed me, just punts randomly across the street. They drive over to the street, and keep in mind, this Black guy is deaf, so he can't even hear them. They drive over, pull out and just start beating him up, and they start tasing him and beating him up, and they're like, put your hands behind your back, you're on arrest. Obviously, he's deaf, he doesn't know, he just sees people attacking him. He's trying to run and punch him in the head like so many times, tase him so many times, and they try to say he was justified because he bit them. We see the body cam footage, we see them punching him repeatedly, we see that he's unable to speak. They're saying put your hands behind your back. You obviously can't hear it because they're attacking him and he's just screaming and they keep beating him up. And the police officers still try to press charges. They press charges that he assaulted police officers, even though the body cam footage is clear. And then they took this to the court and then the judge upheld that. And it wasn't until this thing came out to the public that they dropped all the charges. But I'm like, all the people that lied to get to that stage, they're still cool. Everyone is cool. The judge is cool. The police officer is cool. Everyone is cool. America's so madly corrupt. Like,
that is crazy.
Nobody got anything for that. It was just like, we dropped the charges and I was okay.
Wow. That is crazy. That is crazy. And I think it just goes to show as well, with it, what you said, it also just emphasizes this, there's still this kind of almost like visceral level of Blackness means criminal, Blackness means you fear. Just those associations, that the fact that the police could just go to him and just immediately...
Yeah. In the States, definitely, that association is extremely strong. That's why I'm so scared. That's why I'm always like, I really don't like the States. I feel like the association is extremely strong there. I mean, the association also exists here in the UK, don't get me wrong, but America's just another level.
But I think it's almost like a spectrum, and I think it manifests in different levels in different places. You just spoke about the States, then we're talking about Nigeria on the other hand, that's a Black majority country, but at the same time, if you think about it, there is something going on there. Again, people deserve goodness as well. Do you understand what I mean? We as a country, we deserve to have good things. It doesn't have to all be in the West.
I want that so badly. I want us to have good things. I don't want to be in this cold country all the time. I want to enjoy life.
It's almost like you're either rich enough to get out of Nigeria or you're poor enough and you have to stay, or you're super rich and elite that you are in, that Nigeria serves you. Bubble. Exactly. You're in that top elite that Nigeria serves you, and people can afford to send their children for healthcare, education abroad. It doesn't matter if the healthcare and education in Nigeria is not good. On the surface, campus, we do all the cultural things, and we're celebrating our culture and stuff. But to me, real celebration is where you empower your people. And if you're not doing that, do you truly love your people? Do you truly love your skin color? Do you truly love yourself? Do you see your people as worthy as a white country where their citizens get? I still think there's a level of self-hate going on, personally. It just manifests differently in that context. Obviously, the way colonialism has affected Nigeria and other African countries is different, but it's still within that spectrum of that anti-self and anti-Black hatred, and just not really seeing your own people, your own self as worthy.
So interesting. I've never looked at the politicians as mentally ill, but the more you describe it,
He's going to hold on to that. But everything can be formulated, right, psychologically. Hopefully, people of the global majority, I think what Gotha was mentioning earlier, is that we're realizing that a lot of Western psychology is just basically very Eurocentric and doesn't serve people of the global majority. What we're having to do is culturally adapt and also learn that some of these concepts were even stolen from, like CBT. I think there's some roots in Afghanistan, mindfulness. I'm sure Gotha can reference quite a few things. Yeah, we're still people with dual heritage. We need conceptualization of distress will be different as well, depending on if you're born and raised here or come from a different country. If we're thinking about, because you reminded me when you spoke about Fanon, I'm a huge fan of Fanon. I referenced him in my thesis.
You need to know about Frantz Fanon.
Yeah, I've mentioned Frantz Fanon to Hamid many times.
Sorry, my bad. Who is he?
Frantz Fanon, he was a psychiatrist and he focused on a Black individual's mental health. I'm going to put in quotation marks decolonization and the limitations of that. But his main concept is Black skin, white mask. And he talks about Black people have a divided sense of self, behaving differently with white people than they do with other Black people. But that's just like a very brief explanation. But he talks about in terms of what we need in mental health systems to support people of the global majority. It is a bit of a heavy read, I would say. It was a 19-something.
Yeah, 1960s. And also, he was working in Algeria when they were fighting their war of independence with France. He saw a lot of trauma that was very much related to the trauma of colonialism. He wrote a lot about that. And also, I think he was from Martinique, which was a Caribbean island that was colonized by the French. And he observed a lot about how people from Martinique, what happens to them when they go to France, like himself, and what happens to their identity and this kind of wanting to be close to whiteness. And he looks at kind of really interesting stuff about like racial relationships and different things and just how it manifests in different ways in the psyche. He's a really good read.
Yeah, I was going to say for the listeners, Fanon, or I'm sure now that we have social media, there's people who are simplifying and making knowledge more accessible. But another person is also Du Bois. Yeah. I used his concept of double consciousness in my undergrad thesis. He looks at how Black people are forced to view themselves through the white perspective while also maintaining a sense of self. But it's obviously, we know it's harmful when it's unilateral. And it's usually people of the global majority living in like as oppressed people in a quotation mark civilized society, and how that impacts one's sense of self as well. These conversations that we're having today have been happening for a very long time, I feel. Like Du Bois and Fanon, they have a lot of literature on this. I was referencing them in early 2000s.
Yeah, Du Bois is super old. He's like early 1900s. He's like early 1900s or something. I think maybe around 100 years, around that. He's quite old.
You guys are geeking out on psychology right now.
This is the thing. It's psychology, because psychology is in everything, a bit like politics. Yeah. Also, because my second undergraduate is actually in sociology. So I was introduced to Fanon and Du Bois from my sociology more than psychology. But then again, they intersect. You can't have sociology without psychology. Those are two concepts that are widely known. And again, it all goes back to the impact of colonialism, as Kothar and Hamid yourself have mentioned. And a lot of what you were saying about the white being the best or Western knowledge being the best is also other countries. I'm thinking about my own in India. It's still the same ideas. I think they probably use a lot more Western knowledge. Why is it that when you go back home and you've got a degree from the West also, you're valued more? They're really still stuck there. So whilst we're here trying to be critical, trying to diversify our knowledge or decolonize, I always put that in quotation marks because I don't think we can decolonize Western psychology because it actually was very harmful at the beginning of its like epistemological and ontological foundations of psychology are very harmful. It justified slavery, there's eugenics and the rest of it. But what we can do now is diversify, and the more people of the global majority we have in psychology, the more we can adapt and help people based on their conceptualization of distress rather than one model.
When you use words like epistemological and ecological,
ontological. No, don't even start, Hamid, with making me try to explain this to the listeners.
For the listeners.
Google.
Okay, fine.
It's all about what is knowledge and how do we obtain this knowledge.
Exactly. Yeah? Just like writing my methodology, it's giving me flashbacks of writing my methodology chapter in my thesis. Oh gosh, headache.
What's your ontological, epistemological stance?
Mine is social constructionist, but with an Islamic lens. I said because there's been a big decolonizing movement, not also in academia, right? So a lot of people have adapted things. I used someone that has tried to use an Islamic epistemology and combine them with a social constructionist approach. And I brought those two together. That's what I did because it was related to my topic area.
That's really good. It's like post-colonial movement in terms of education, introducing different forms of epistemology and ontology.
Definitely.
I've mentioned this to Hamid. It was a 1960s, very hard read in terms of paper, but how academics from the global majority, sometimes similar to what Fanon and Du have said, they've had to have a certain stance for their work to be published. I mean, we still see it today, but how much knowledge we've lost because people had to feel forced to speak from a certain lens.
Yeah.
And I hope we're the generation that's changing that, but
definitely.